Hello and welcome to ATARC's webinar series. Today, topic experts will discuss solutions and strategies when implementing a multi-cloud security network. My name is Kirsten Patton, Working Group Program Manager here at ATARC, and I have the pleasure of moderating today's panel. Welcome to all of our attendees, and a special thanks to Tamara Johns, Stephanie Jones, and the rest of the Mantech team. This afternoon, we are going to hear from our panelists, followed by a Q&A where we will pop in a few polls and answer your questions. Before we begin, I just want to encourage you to please submit those questions of your own in the Q&A section of this platform. We'll be going through them during the panel, so please send them in as we go. And also remember to answer the poll questions that we are going to pop up along the way in order to ensure that you receive your CPE credits for attending today's session. And with that, I would like if our panelists could please come on camera and introduce yourselves. First up, if we could begin with Jerry.
Hey, good afternoon. My name is Gerald Karen. I am the CIO and Assistant Inspector General for IT at the Department of Health and Human Services, Office of the Inspector General, and I am also the co-chair for ATARC's Zero Trust Working Group.
Thanks, Jerry. Good to have you here. And let's hear from John next.
Hi there, I'm John Sims from the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency. I'm a Senior Technical Advisor supporting the TIC program, as well as leading some of our cloud strategies, as well as Zero Trust.
Thank you. And then over to you, Sandeep.
Thank you. My name is Sandeep Shilawat. I'm Vice President Cloud and Edge Computing at Mantech International. At Mantech, we have something called technology focus areas. I lead their data at the edge technology focus area. I also lead the cloud strategy at Mantech. Thank you.
Awesome. So let's start out with our first question, why we're all here today. Why are Zero Trust solutions essential for protecting multi-cloud environments? I know that's probably a pretty broad question, but go ahead and answer it as it relates to you and your experiences. And we'll just go in the same order, but feel free to, chime in, play off of each other. First up, Jerry.
Oh, you always have the hard questions first. Definitely, whether it's cloud or not, I think Zero Trust is the right way to approach security nowadays. But and as in regards to cloud is, as we're modernizing and moving to cloud, our attack surface is changing, and that as a result, the flow of our data and where our data resides is changing. And Zero Trust focuses on protecting data. So taking the practices of Zero Trust, which are tried and true practices, right data to the right people at the right time from the identity perspective, segmenting the data, understanding where your data is, how to monitor it, putting the controls closer to protect that data in a cloud environment is a little different, because now you're working with the providers in some senses with a SaaS. How do you monitor it? How do you secure it? Because even though it's maybe FedRAMP, there's a panacea there that, oh, it's FedRAMP, I don't have to do anything. No, you still have responsibilities. It's your data, you have to monitor it, and you have to do certain configurations correct as well still. IaaS, PaaS, of course, definitely the provider may provide some things, but you still have to understand how to monitor and protect your data in those environments. And I think the practices of Zero Trust, whether it's an on-prem or cloud environment, really help lend themselves to helping achieve that goal of protecting the data.
Excellent, thank you. And then John, what's your take on why Zero Trust solutions are so essential?
Well, I think Jerry hit on a number of the very important topics, but I think we've really seen over the years, especially in the last 5 years, that the perimeter security is no longer adequate to protect our, data in our applications. And I really think that identity is really the new perimeter, and looking at how multi-cloud relies on identity to provide access into the applications and data that we use to support our agencies. I really think that's one of the key elements to how we've been able to successfully leverage cloud over the last 18 months in particular in light of COVID. But one thing I just want to kind of take a step back on is that this, the strategies that that we've used over the last 25 years, and the technologies in some cases, looking at mainframes, just are not adequate to protect our computing environments. And I really think that now is a good time, in light of SolarWinds, in light of the ransomware attacks we've had, especially in this last year. It's really important for us to take a step back and really ask ourselves why this isn't working. And then, as we start looking at our strategies and looking at, adopting zero trust architectures and ultimately the solutions that are going to, support those architectures, that's really going to help us understand, how we need to move through the process changes, the organizational changes, but more importantly to the workforce. Because the zero trust, is a challenge because it requires an agency to really look at how they use technology. And as Jerry pointed out, looking at how systems talk to each other, looking at data flows, and how users actually use that those systems in that data is going to be really the most important element to understand and study as you plan for those zero trust solutions, especially in a complex multi-cloud environment.
Excellent. And then Sandeep, as a industry professional in the IT space, what is your take on zero trust solutions for multi-cloud environments?
Yeah, listening to Jerry and John talking about zero trust was, kind of getting the taste of your own medicine. It's they touched on so many topics. We can go on an hour taking each one of these topics and tearing it apart. I think the key thing that Jerry mentioned is the controls, right? And I think the key thing John mentioned is the identity, right? I think cloud being, cloud, right? It's multi-cloud. I think that's what John was referring to. I think cloud being ubiquitous, it's everywhere, right? So do you know the network? Do you know the place? Do you know the device? Do you know how you're accessing it? Are you in a all these are important questions. So the whole model of this moat and wall security, the whole castle approach, John was mentioning perimeter-based security, traditionally worked well. So let's give the credit when it's due. But in the cloud environment, that approach is not enough. COVID proved, right? Cloud has this elasticity to consume all the demand. In some cases, we had few hiccups, but I think it consumed all the demand. So the value is proven. But what about the controls, right? You also saw the breaches going up, some of those things occurring that, John was mentioning too. So identity is the only firewall you have. So how do you take that identity firewall, segment through this network that might, we speak about Huawei and other people capturing the supply chain of security. How do you go through? How do you make sure when you access this cloud, you're always secure? That's the challenges the agencies are facing. And when this whole COVID thing broke loose, they reached out to the industry, finding out solutions to those problems. Cloud also gave you a very different perspective on things, right? Like social media occurred, it was all awesome. I used to see my old friends everywhere. And then I realized, oh, my private information going out there. Some of these recent breaches prove to you that everything is connected. Things that took so long for it to occur is occurring a lot faster than we can imagine. So are we prepared for that? And zero trust finally is actually the only natural ally you have for cloud, because cloud, if you want cloud to be everywhere, the only thing that goes with data is your identity. So that's the only way to protect it, which is why this approach of zero trust is very important for multi-clouds.
Excellent answers. So with that, we're going to go ahead and pop up our first poll question of today. And again, if you are an attendee, make sure to answer this in order to receive your CPE credit. Question is, zero trust-based security is, and then the options include software product, a security service, an architecture, or a concept that allows trusted and untrusted access in a similar way. So please take a moment to respond to that poll, and then we'll pop up the results. Maybe quickly, we could have each of our panelists respond with what they would choose. I guess we didn't put an option for all, but whatever it is that your take is. Jerry, do you want to answer this one first?
Sure. I would definitely say architecture to me, because we've typically, I think people have experienced this. We've done security in stovepipes, right? The network people would do their thing, the identity people would do their thing. But what we're talking about with Zero Trust is a true integration of all of our security so that it all works together, because we have to make risk-based decisions based off actions or factors that are all put together. So we have to take all these factors into consideration, which add up to some kind of risk level. And depending on what your tolerance is, take an appropriate action, whether that's I let John into the network and be able to download, print, and access all the data that he's trying to get to, or I may just give him read only, or there's too much risk. I may not allow him onto the network at all. But it's a lot of things that have to work together, whether it be conditional access policies from the cloud, your Active Directory, your identity management solutions. Are you fully managing device? Is it BYOD? How are you logging in? Are you using a PIV card? Are you using, there's all kinds of different risk levels that all adds up to, and you got to make decisions. And then factors can change while people are accessing things, so the risk may change as well, so you have to take an appropriate action. So I call it an integration and an architecture when I talk about it.
Nice. And John, would you agree, or would you have a different answer for that?
I wouldn't disagree with Jerry. The only thing I would add is that I think we should talk about it from the perspective of philosophy in terms of Zero Trust is being a mindset. It certainly is an architecture. But I think it's also, cultural. I think it's a mindset. And I think that, what we're talking about with Zero Trust is not necessarily something new per se, but really looking at how we're, cordoning off parts of our networks and leveraging some of the more ubiquitous capabilities that are needed to build a really robust defense in depth architecture. Hinging upon some key, capabilities like identity in particular as a way to support risk management for our applications and data. So, I see, Zero Trust being marketed heavily as a solution or XYZ product. But I really think it's a little bit bigger than that. There are some excellent solutions out there. Don't get me wrong, but I think that we really have to understand how that fits within our organization and how it supports our overall ability to protect and provide visibility to our applications and our data.
Great perspectives. Sandy, what's your take on that?
Yeah, great answers, by the way. I agree with Jerry and John both. Every time I'm going in a meeting, folks ask, what do I buy to get Zero Trust? Well, you cannot buy something at a Zero Trust. It's an approach, it's a philosophy. You need, and you already have some of it. You just need to go looking, and by design, we allowed insiders to access resources. That's where we trusted them. One of my colleagues, hates this name Zero Trust. It means trust only those are authorized. It doesn't mean no trust at all. It means trust those are authorized, and everybody needs to get authorized. I think that's the essence of that philosophy. What solutions, what architectures, what problem sets get solved due to this is the next topic. It's essentially the part of the answer, but it's more of a philosophical approach on solving the problem of trusted access and untrusted access. I think then, like John was saying, there are a whole bunch of great solutions in the market. You need to take it and put it into your context and see how it works. DoD works differently, HHS works differently. Every agency has its own constraints, and you need to take that and put that approach in to see if you are achieving that Zero Trust, if I may, and not give access to people in a trusted fashion.
Absolutely. Great answers. So moving on to the next question. Of course, we can't go a webinar without bringing up COVID-19. So what was your biggest COVID-19 challenge when it came to security and the cloud at your agency? Jerry, starting with you.
Definitely is assessing. Well, I didn't do it when it was already underway when I was here because I'm pretty new in my current position. But at my last position, it was, doing a quick assessment of the risk tolerance. Things like doing remote work. Were some of the things that we were doing or ended up doing were probably a year or two off, because we were projectized and planning, but we had to take immediate action. So what had to be done is you had to quickly assess the risk and what your tolerance was for allowing to do these things. Of course, when things settle down a bit, we go back and look at things and maybe tighten it up a little bit more, put some more controls in place. But really, we found out, what we thought was so risky wasn't, we understood what our new risk tolerance was as a result, and that what we would deem, oh my God, we'll never do that. That's too risky. No, we ended up doing it because we got educated really quick in how to do it securely and understand what our new risk level was. So that's very important. And I think that's one of the biggest things. When people talk about zero trust, it's always about the technology, the policy, the understanding the risk, the methodology that you're going to apply, and all the players that need to participate, because it's not just like the IT guys. You need the business owners, the data owners, and all of those folks. It's that part, that non-technical part, is just as important and just as resource, or just as much work, if not more, than the technical aspects of doing zero trust.
John, what was your COVID-19 challenge or experience when it came to security in the cloud?
Well, I'm going to talk about it from the context of the TIC Program Management Office. We all kind of saw, I think it was right around March 13th, where we went from a telework posture of a portion of our agency, working offsite, to upwards of 99% of an agency working offsite through the network, through the cloud. And one of the things we experienced, as we were talking with agencies, is that we saw very vividly and very clearly why our previous, version of the trusted internet connection architecture was failing us. And that was, agencies were trying desperately to leverage the cloud, as Jerry indicated, in ways that we never anticipated 2 weeks and even a month before, March 13th. And so, as agencies were trying to determine how to operationalize their remote workforce and provide them with the capabilities that were necessary to really leverage cloud the way they needed to, we quickly, at the TIC PMO, worked with a number of agencies and some of the cloud service providers to develop interim telework guidance to support the new policy initiative in M1926 for the TIC version 3.0, which basically deconstructed and deprecated the need to utilize a TIC perimeter architecture to access cloud. And we put that together very quickly. It was about a 3-week turnaround from the first sentence to getting it out on our public website to support agencies, because we were in such a gray area in terms of not having the necessary time to put together the new interim guidance to support what agencies really needed to do long term. And so that was one of the things we really focused on, and it was directly supporting the agencies. So that's my contribution.
Good stuff. And then Sandeep, as the industry SME on this panel, what was your take with the biggest COVID challenges you saw for security in the cloud?
We are on Zoom right now. I don't know whether you noticed that. And when we started, there was not much of a Zoom going on, So when this whole thing came along, I was picking up my laptop and heading home and thinking about, this has been my pet peeve for many years. Okay, there's going to be a black swan event that would occur and cloud's elasticity would be tested. We always thought, there was a capacity, but who would have thought that all of it will get tested in matter of days and weeks, like John was explaining here. So it all opened up. Zoom had its own hiccups, but the capacity survived. In fact, I haven't heard any major capacity issues across industry except those who were not much out there, from the cloud perspective. So that part worked well. The part where we were closely monitoring, Mantic is a cyber company, we work with all the agencies, present company included, on cyber topics. So that was immediate next thought. What happens now? Everybody gets an opportunity. How does the device get protected? How do you access videos, right? And all kinds of policies come into picture. Luckily, though, cloud did provide that ability to experiment. Cloud did provide that ability to be agile. The mistakes that occurred did not have that much of proliferation. The blast radius was very limited. And all the premises about security of cloud got tested. Multi-cloud networking, take all those, backhauling the traffic through your data centers. All the products that you imagined would be having this much capacity and you were only using this much, everything got tested. And to IT industry's credit, it came out flying colors. I was surprised to see, like John was mentioning, within a matter of days and weeks, agencies changed their policies. DoD enabled access to their email in matter of days. And this thing, if you take in a classic scenario, would have taken at least months, if not years, to complete. Things like that were done in matter of days. So kudos to the agency, kudos to the industry. I think we all from IT side, for once, lived up to the challenge that Black Swan event presented to us. I think there is a lot of area to improve, but I do think that industry and government did come together very well on this topic and presented the best possible face. And we are still doing it well, I think.
Yeah, excellent. That's an awesome example for sure. So let's answer some of these audience questions that came in. Since they were not prepared, feel free to jump in if you want to answer it first. But Nat is asking, does Zero Trust architecture support BYOD, bring your own device? How? Who would like to be the first one to answer that?
I'll take it. This is John. I'll take a crack at that. So I think the answer is yes. BYOD, going back to our last question where we were talking about the flexibilities to manage, COVID. We know that a number of agencies were put in a situation where they had to utilize a number of different types of devices and allow for those devices to connect directly into cloud to support their agency business. And so I think that Zero Trust, going back to the identity as the new perimeter, allows agencies and organizations to, provide those types of services from non-government furnished equipment or BYOD. While there is a risk, there's ways to manage and offset the risk. Jerry talked about some of that in some of his previous talking points in terms of like controlling access policies to what you can and cannot do in cloud environments. So, that squarely fits within the paradigm of Zero Trust.
Great.
I just add some things to that as well, and John said a lot of it very well. So BYOD, you're doing manage application, and that's where really what facilitates the access to the data between the user and the data, right, is the application. So you're doing application management. You still have some telemetry if you do it right of what kind of devices. So you can block certain types of devices or manufacturers, that you don't want on your network. You can by iOS. So there is some telemetry you can do with BYOD. You're not fully managing it, so you don't have all the great security agents you would on a desktop and things like that. So there's a different level of risk possibly, but you just have to understand that. John talking about the identity as a new perimeter, it's really, if John's account gets compromised, I'm worried about the cloud, really, and the reality of it. That's where my risk is, if a person gets compromised. So definitely there's a little different aspect, but there is some management that you can do on a BYOD if you do it right and block certain devices, like I said. But it goes down to what's your risk tolerance and what is your methodology that you're going to apply in policies, and then what do you want to, like, if BYOD, all right, I'm not going to let you download or print. I'll let you read all day, but I'm not going to let you download or print anything. I can wipe your application. As soon as you register to use BYOD, I'm managing that application. I don't care if you have your home email on it. I'm managing your application. Understand that. That's the policy. I can't wipe your device. I can't manage your device, but I can manage your application. So those are some things to understand and consider.
And moving on to the next audience question, Subra asks, does Zero Trust and DoD data strategy contradict, or is it aligned? Thoughts on that from the panelists?
I can take that. I think to earlier question and to this question, I think this is the favorite topic of mine. I think Zero Trust and cloud are natural allies. The cloud was built not to location specific service. It was built to serve the community. There is a government cloud for government community, and then there's a commercial cloud and DoD clouds. These are purpose-built clouds for that community. There was never promise on a device. So bring your own device. Device is the key word there. Now, what that device has, and like Jerry was saying, how to control the content was, I think that was the key topic. I think the second part to whether DoD strategy and Zero Trust are aligned. DoD strategy actually specifically addresses the topics of trusted access. I think there is a natural convergence. You need to, again, if you look at the Zero Trust as a product, then you would not be able to see the convergence. But if you see as a strategy and a philosophy, you would see actually DoD is trying to get to a place where they can access their data from across the globe, CONUS and OCONUS locations, and see how they can do it in, like Jerry was mentioning, what is the risk tolerance here? What kind of data I'm dealing with? Is it a mission? What kind of things I'm dealing with? And then it is not always about technology, right? It is also about people and culture and how you're accessing it. So all those things need to be considered. And I think DoD has done a great job building that strategy. And I think Zero Trust is central to their strategy.
Great answer. Any other panelists want to chime into this before we move on? All right, sounds good. So let's pop up our second poll then. We have, how do you see Zero Trust in cloud computing? And the answers you can provide include unrelated, Zero Trust is nice to have on cloud can benefit from Zero Trust, or cloud and Zero Trust are natural allies. So go ahead and answer that.
It's an unfair poll question because Sandeep just answered that, gave them the answer if they listened.
If they were listening.
We're testing the audience, so we'll see if they were paying attention or not. So go ahead and answer that. Since Sandeep just answered it, we don't necessarily have to respond to the poll unless the panelists would like to. But the next question that I was going to present is related to the one that we just talked about with COVID-19, but pretty much I'm just curious, how ready was your organization or your agency for this change in the way in which business is conducted? Did you feel that you guys were, prepared in the sense of it was an easy transition, or are you still working on things as we move forward, to finish out 2021, which is crazy to say? Jerry, what are your thoughts behind that?
I think the agency I'm in now, they were pretty much migrated to the cloud as far as email, calendar, files, things like that. So in that sense, really well, had a good VPN solution, but there are some things that I'm introducing and ideas that I would like to further modernize in this direction and truly apply it as a zero trust architecture, and not be such stovepipe. So, taking that, the first steps is, when I came in, what's the inventory? What do I have? And understanding what my landscape is on an architecture and concepts and framework of zero trust, which I walked in with. All right, where can I fit these things that can contribute that I already have for zero trust? And then prioritize my projects that I want to improve on or take advantage of. All right, I'm not using it for this reason, but I can start using it. So getting those projects going. But the other thing is I know where my gaps are as well as a result of that inventory, and applying it towards, the boxes, which my chart has boxes of different areas and functional areas of zero trust with their concepts. So plugging those in, and then I'll know my gaps. And then, all right, what do I need? I don't have anything here. So start pursuing, start doing the market research on filling those gaps. So at a real high level, that's kind of how I'm approaching it. But some good foundational things were done, that allowed for, at least for COVID, for people to function. I do know that the office of the OIG here at HHS is fully functioning as a result this past year and hasn't missed a beat in delivering on their mission. So pretty well prepared, but more work to do.
Yep, fantastic. How about you, John?
Well, I will talk very briefly about DHS and CISA. We were pretty prepared because the majority of our workforce was under telework agreements and generally teleworked rather multiple days a week. And I think that DHS OCIO did a very good job of looking for ways very quickly to facilitate access to the systems and cloud environments that we needed. So my hat's off to that team. But the other thing I'll just mention is, from a support, as I mentioned, from that TIC perspective, from the TIC program management office, we understood that there were a lot of agencies that were very, very ready for this. We could tell by, our conversations with, a wide variety of small, micro to some of the larger and more federated agencies. But there were a few, quite clearly, that were just absolutely crushed by this situation, and they were looking for basically relief from any means possible. And so, we really saw a wide variety of things, but I think by and large, a lot of the federal agencies were somewhat prepared for this, and I think that. It didn't take them too long to really take a look at what they had, just going on what Jerry was saying, to understand what they had to work with, and working with the cloud service providers, and some of the other, edge security providers out there. They were able to quickly, adjust this operationally.
And then Sandeep, how about over at Mantech?
So being a technocrat, we never get credited for showing very great human empathy. Okay, but in this particular case, right, we already kudos to the government and to the IT industry, but the human element of it was actually tasted the whole spirit of business continuity. I think Jerry can appreciate this more than anybody else on their business continuity plan. None of this was thought about. Everything that we encountered was completely brand new thing that is occurring. It was not a tornado coming in, or it was not a thunderstorm that we were switching off the data centers. This was not the business continuity problem that was posed. The problem that was posed, that humans were uncertain. We were entering into an era where we didn't know, what's happening. We were in a lockdown, closed, and looking through the TV and in front of our computers. And I remember my wife, who was supposed to test her laptop that day for remote working, was told by her company, don't come to work from home and see how it goes. That human element of that spirit of humans, I think we don't get credited, and especially government servants, we should give kudos to the spirit that worked. The business continuity actually continued, and of course technology worked. Technology worked to its fullest. Mantic didn't miss a bit. We served our customers, agencies, and some of this work is pretty classified and needed personal presence. I remember carrying a letter around from my CEO saying, "Hey, this person works for government, so if you find him on lockdown, moving somewhere, let him go. He's all right." And this is important because while technology was working fine, I think humans showed up to the party and did their part as well. Especially government servants from in the spirit of service, they did a great job. I want to take this opportunity to salute the spirit of humanity there.
Absolutely. So let's answer these two audience questions that came in. Again, just jump in if you want to respond first. Calvin asks, what are some of the signs that an agency is doing enough to implement zero trust? It's a good question.
This is John. I'll jump in there. I don't know that there's really a bar that says enough. To me, it's something that going back to the philosophy, I'll also throw the overused word journey in there. This is something that has to be, zero trust has to be continually managed and improved upon. If you think of, continuous improvement or, the OODA loop, philosophies, I think those are things that need to resonate with our folks in the IT community and in leadership, because it's not a one and done. It's not a matter of plugging a box in. It's not a matter of, you're going to be there in 3 years. This is something that has to endure and evolve over time so that, agencies and leadership and the IT teams can continually improve the cybersecurity mechanisms. And I think that with the rapid evolution of technology and what we're going to be able to do in the coming years it's just we can't probably even perceive what it's going to be like now. So we've got to be able to factor that work into what we do going forward.
Great answer. Any other panelists, or should we move on to the next one?
I think one nugget in there, just I would like to add is, what John said. I think these are all forced moves here on. I think the pace of technical disruption and what's going on in the industry, most of the moves are forced. Is there going to be enough? It's never going to be enough. Like John said, it's a journey, but I think most of the paths are laid out in front of us, and the speed has. You can gauge by the earnings being reported by the cloud vendors and security vendors. They're blasting through the roof. So I think most of the moves are forced here on for zero trust.
Great. Let's see. Oh, okay. Jerry responded. I was going to call on you for that anyway. So do you have any recommended templates or kits that help in a zero trust journey? If you're online, Jerry just shared a couple resources. Do you want to just say what those are real quick?
Yeah, there's of course 800-207 from NIST. There's also, if you can Google it, DISA has a zero trust document, or DoD has a very good zero trust document written by DISA. NSA has a very good document. And of course, I'll put the plug in for our ATARC working group. We have a whole bunch of artifacts on our site if you join the group, and can get access to those, where we've kind of fleshed out, starting with a overview architecture with concepts, and kind of fleshed out a little more in detail, which we're providing the vendors that are participating, which they'll build off the use cases and those concepts and things. So we've kind of fleshed that out. So we have a lot of good documentation, as well as these reference materials on our site in our ATARC working group as well.
Yeah, and then do you want to speak to the checklist as well for inventory?
Oh, the checklist for inventory. So it's kind of have to go off. I kind of use my presentation for that. Like I said, I have compartmentalized the different functional areas, which we've also defined in our ATARC working group. And then it's like, all right, what do I have in this What do I have in my inventory that can contribute to this? Like, if the identity box. All right, I have Active Directory. All right, I have Azure AD. I have Okta. Okay, these are all contributes to identity. All right, now what is my maturity in these areas and what I want to do with the concepts that I've identified in Zero Trust? All right, I got some work to do. So, I can utilize and leverage these things and mature using those. Or it's like, I just don't have anything. I don't have anything to do data segmentation within a database. All right, what can I find to do that? So there's a gap. So I don't have a maturity level there. So definitely some things that I kind of do, but I'd have to show my presentation probably to go through it a little bit more.
That's great. And Mel, maybe you can capture those resources and include them in a follow-up email. If you could do that, that would be fantastic. Sounds good. So, okay, on to the next question. Tom Beck asks, true Zero Trust principles assume breach. Can you please comment on how identity management can prevent an attack from inside the perimeter?
I'll chime in, and I'm sure the other gentleman will have more, but it's like the X-Files. Trust no one, right? Everybody's the same. I don't care if you're inside or outside. If you truly follow the principles of Zero Trust, it doesn't matter if you're an outsider or an insider. We're protecting the data. That's where the focus is. And John talked about identity being the new perimeter. It's the right data to the right people at the right time. I don't care if you're coming from inside or outside. If you do it correctly and follow the true principles of Zero Trust, it doesn't matter, because you trust no one. And yes, you do assume breach, but everybody's equal until I have full confidence, and as well as devices as well. The devices, treat them as an identity as well, because we got IoT devices. So there's a little risk to having IoT devices. But basically, if you do true Zero Trust, it doesn't matter if you're inside or outsider. I'm going to treat you the same until I perform all the checks that I need to check and all the telemetry that I need to understand what the risk is of letting you access the data that you're trying to access.
Yeah, this is John. I'll just add on to what Jerry said. One of the other things that with identity providers in identity and access management with Zero Trust, in a more mature state, leveraging the continuous authentication, where you don't just log in one time and you get unfettered access, where you can stay on the application for hours and hours upon at a time. The ability to continue to re-authenticate based on different access within an application or access to different data sets is going to be something that's also going to limit the ability of an attacker to leverage a Zero Trust environment. But the other thing that's really important is when you do a granular implementation in a mature state for Zero Trust, the ability to gain telemetry and insights, into user actions with behavioral analysis and those types of analytical capabilities, that's also going to give you an awareness of how applications are used, what's normal versus abnormal, so that your automated response or your human security operations center analyst can take appropriate action.
Excellent. So let's take a break from audience questions. We will go through them in a second. Let's pop up the third poll question, please. Your agency has how many cloud workloads? And your answers include few development workloads and websites, some non-mission critical production workloads, many non-mission critical production workloads, but few mission critical workloads. Or the last option is my agency runs multiple mission critical workloads in the cloud. So please take a moment to respond to that. And let's get back to the audience questions, since we have a lot come through. This is awesome. Okay. Within the NIST publication on ZTA, there are some significant monitoring requirements. How does your agency support monitoring for a Zero Trust architecture? comments from the panel? John?
Well, it's not really probably wise for me to try and answer this because I technically don't get involved in this at my agency. I'm more of a external support, but I think that looking at the operational capabilities that agencies have, whether it's through CDM or their Security Operations Center, I think those are some key areas to look at.
Yeah, I would agree with John. I think the origin of the transfer would begin at the CDM program. And I think monitoring requirements of zero trust are not any different than the monitoring requirements that you have. I think what zero trust looks for is, do you have all of those areas covered? Do you track those identities, and do you know that if action took place at a geopolitical, geosensitive location, can I track it back to you? And that identity-based logging, is it available? I think that's what the standard refers to. And many of these programs, including CDM, actually looks for that. And there is a whole architecture and design around it that will go along with it. But I think what we need to get across here is neither zero trust is a product, or not that zero trust is a thing you do, right? I think most importantly, what zero trust is to take the assets and artifacts you have and achieve the philosophical goal of providing only authorized accesses, inside or outside. I think if we get to that goal with audits and programs and logs and SOCs, I think we will be able to achieve that.
I'm just going to add a little bit to this, and maybe a little bit of different perspective. We're talking about cloud, and multi-cloud is the title, and how zero trust supports multi-cloud. So, as we move to cloud and we modernize from our on-prem, like I said earlier, I think during the first question, data is flowing in a different direction. Data is residing in a different place. And one of the things we need to monitor or understand when we're monitoring, what does normal look like? How do we baseline normal so that we know when to take action when something normal does not happen? A conditional access policy gets triggered. Sandeep's missing 0-day patches on his device that I'm fully managing. I don't want that device. I might have to quarantine it. But what does normal look like? Because if you got to kind of understand what normals look like if I'm protecting data and where it's flowing, and is it flowing to the right places? Is it where it resides? Is it protected where it resides? That monitoring is very important. And then, like I said before, we got to assess a bunch of different factors and almost as real times dynamically, and it's got to be a lot of unstructured data. But the thing is as I remind people, and had a talk the other day, is this takes a village. It's not the networking people. It's not just the identity people. This takes a village, and you have to get everybody bought in. Understand from the executives on down, why are we doing this? Why is it important? And then, understanding of, the agency supporting the monitoring will definitely come. I think the executive order has, definitely, with the high emphasis on zero trust, has definitely made it very well known from the top down that zero trust is very important. So as a result, monitoring is a big part of that. So if zero trust is important, then monitoring is going to fall in line. So just a few comments around that subject for me.
I just want to carry on that thought, and I think this is a very important point Jerry made there. I think, remember, when in a commercial industry, if it's not a federal market, it's an easy question to answer. There's no public policy involved. Major discussions all along for the last 10 years in federal market has been about willingness to trust for somebody else to let host the data, right? And that trust that agencies were to have with the cloud providers now needs to be vetted. The only mechanism you have is through identity. And that's why zero trust is so important. And as long as you can track back the data movement to the identity, that's the monitoring requirement mentioned in the NIST standard. And it goes through a lot of details to actually elaborate a way to find that out. So as long as the policy goal is achieved and the goal of identification is achieved, I think all the monitoring requirements will be met. Then you can talk about the products, tools, and architectures thereof.
Great answers. This next one, Jerry, you pretty much answered it already, but I don't know if there's anything you wanted to add about how mandated agencies like HHS, or maybe John, you want to speak to it, are reacting to the White House cybersecurity executive order, whether they're embracing it, scrambling, resigned, ignoring. How do you face those funding hurdles?
I printed it off and I embrace it like a teddy bear when I go to sleep at night. I think it's a great thing.
So cozy.
I was actually really happy and really when this came out. It definitely is something that I think that it's being realized, and John can agree or disagree with me, but I think the spirit of what the EO is really trying to get is to get us to a more effective place with our cybersecurity, and not just compliance. And this is Jerry's opinion that he's stated on a few occasions, is I think we're very compliant in the way we've done security. The OIG has made findings, and they're based off FISMA, which is did you do this, did you do that with your system, and one of those controls is authentication. Does your system needs to provide authentication? All right, username and password, I'm compliant. But I think everybody will agree that does not equal effectiveness. So what I think the great thing about the EO is I think it's trying to drive us towards being effective at our cybersecurity. I can't speak on behalf of HHS as a whole. I'm a component of HHS, but I think a lot of people are embracing it. They're understanding from the working groups, because I participate in a couple working groups, the CIO's Innovation Council on Zero Trust, as well as the ATARC working group. We have a lot of representation, and there's a lot, and I've briefed individual agencies, on the architecture and the concepts and things, and it's truly being embraced. But I still find that there's still the education that's needed, truly, on what Zero Trust is. People will say, I'm doing Zero Trust. Well, I'll see that they're doing identity management. Well, there's a little more to it than that, in the architecture. So that's why I did my architecture, is so I could, where I was working before, well, if you're not talking about everything on here, then you're not doing Zero Trust, you're just doing this piece, kind of thing. So I still find that as a struggle. But I think people are starting to learn, the right people are getting involved. The EO, like I said, has got senior management attention now that this is important. So I think that's a great thing, that, the whole agencies are getting involved in some form or fashion now from the top down, gives that emphasis.
Yeah. So thanks, Jerry. I think agencies are embracing this. I can tell you that, in some of our conversations, myself and one of my colleagues, who's a regular on this panel, Sean Connolly, we're right in the middle of a lot of the cloud elements of the executive order. And I know that, a lot of the agencies are looking for additional support when it comes to justifying their budgets, when it comes to supporting, increased cybersecurity protections for their environments, because, the folks on the ground that are running these systems, that are trying to, establish these cloud environments, they're really looking for that support. I think the EO absolutely supports, some very key initiatives. I look at it as more of a North Star, giving us something that we can really, focus on. Because the one thing that the IT community and the federal government suffers from is a lack of focus at times, because there's so many things that they're responsible for. So this, to me, is a truly huge opportunity for us to lay the path for the next 3 to 5 years, to really take a look at our architectures, look at cloud, and look at how we can use modernization through the EO, incorporating Zero Trust, and really just moving forward. This, I think that, to what Jerry was saying, is, the education point. There's a lot that we have to learn, along the way, But I think that what we need to do is commit ourselves to learning what we need to mature our understanding of cloud and mature our understanding of zero trust and what it means to leverage those to support our agency's mission. And I think that those are important elements that I think are reinforced by the executive order.
Excellent. All right. So moving on to the next one, with customers moving to multi-cloud, how do you essentially monitor and secure data access across clouds and multiple data stores within these clouds? Sandeep, do you want to take this one?
Yeah, this is my favorite topic. Absolute favorite. So while we put everybody on the cloud, we never told them how to manage cloud from cradle to grave. So this is a topic that gets discussed again and again, and industry has answers in bits and pieces. So as a trusted partner with government, we always pondered about it, right? How do we go about telling that one place answer? It's a great question, in fact. I think we always looked at cloud as something out there, and then there is a phrase in the market, cloud is just somebody else's computer. I think it's more than that. It's a hyperscaler computer where your data might land up in a location that you don't want it. How do you find and do you know how to put that application out there? What approaches to use and what risks are you creating to your data thereof? I think there is a need in the market for a cradle to grave, and all the CSPs, cloud service providers have done great job of creating a solution for their ecosystem. What we didn't prepare for this multi-cloud world where every agency has at least 3 to 5 cloud vendors and hundreds of cloud accounts. And when you're looking at that, getting that single pane of glass picture for how many violations do you have, how many poems am I running, what kind of costs I'm running into, where I'm overrunning, where I'm underrunning. I think that single pane of glass picture is missing for multi-cloud environments. So we at Mantech are actually working to solve this exact problem. And we are working with multiple agencies to showcase, present company included, where we're showcasing them that single pane of glass and providing them the portfolio view of what things are, what is missing, how do you monitor. And then, of course, there are great tools out there in market that can actually then go take it to the granular level. But to bring that fringe ecosystem together at multi-cloud platform level is what we are actually trying to solve using a single pane of glass solution. So a great question. And absolutely, there is not a single answer existing. And most of my colleagues here would agree that the industry doesn't have a solution for their problem yet.
Yeah, this is John. If I could just jump in on that, I think that's Sandeep brought up some very good points. The bottom line is, from what I've seen is that multi-cloud does present a real challenge with regard to telemetry, visibility, and looking at that, as Sandeep said, single pane of glass. We know that there's a bifurcation of what the situational awareness and the overall risk looks like when you have multiple clouds. And so I think that's an area that I know CISA has been looking at, with some of our projects to figure out how we bring that information together, in support of our area of the mission. But, as we do that collectively as the federal government, I think it's going to take, work with the cloud service providers and the vendor community to really look at how we approach this. I think that in short order, we're going to be in a much better place to come up with ways to manage that.
Awesome, great answers. So I promised a fourth and final poll question. We're gonna put that up on the screen real quickly. And how many cloud service providers does your agency have? You can answer 1, 2, 3, or more than 3. So go ahead and post that. For the rest of the audience questions, we will capture those and we'll ask our panelists if they'd be able to provide answers. Just in the interest of time, we want to make sure that the answers are thoughtful enough in response and we don't have to rush through it. But on that note, since we only have a minute left, I would love to hear, closing thoughts, last statements you want to leave our audience with. And we'll go around in the same order we started. And let's hear from Jerry first, please.
You squeezed enough roll out of this rock today. No.
It can be an inspirational quote if you'd like.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't have those off the top of my head. But a lot of great input today, from especially Sandeep and John. Some great answers and some great insights. And we're just scratching the surface on some things. So there's still a lot more context to in getting into zero trust. So hopefully people don't walk away say, I know everything about zero trust from listening to this, although there's some great input on it. But definitely, provided those resources, I would definitely read those, understand those, reach out, network. We're all trying to accomplish this in one form or fashion. We're all dealing with the same problems. And I think that's something that we have to do, especially for the federal government, is network more on some of these things. There's plenty of good working groups out there. Definitely join. We have the ATARC working group. There's other working groups as well. That are doing some great stuff around this area. So definitely network, get out there, understand, and reach out. And the idea of the EO is to strengthen the nation's cybersecurity posture. So like I said, we all have the same mission in that case. So whether you're a vendor or a government employee or provide services as a contractor, let's work together and do this.
Fantastic. Thank you, Jerry. And John, what would you like to leave us with?
Yeah, I'd just like to say that there's multiple ways to get to where we need to go to get to zero trust. There's no, I don't think, one right way to do it. I think that there's a lot of great ideas, not only in the federal space, but also in the vendor community. The biggest thing is utilize strategy. Support your planning activities, to make sure you have an appropriate budget, and just don't stop. Keep looking for ways to continually mature your architectures and your zero trust strategies.
Fantastic. Thank you, John. And Sandeep, you get to wrap us up.
This was a great conversation. It was an honor to be in company of Jerry and John here. I think, like Jerry said, we're all in this together. COVID proved that, and that's where we are at. And zero trust is zero trust for beating the bad guy. If you're doing the right thing and if you have the right identity, you would be all right. So zero trust is zero trust for the bad guy. I think that's the closing comment I have for it.
Fantastic. We're all in this to get High School Musical reference, if you have kids, you might know it. So thank you guys. Unfortunately, that's all the time we have, but I want to thank our panelists again and you all at home for joining us. Excellent questions. This was a great one. We hope to see you again for our next one on August 10th from 10 to 12:15 p.m. Eastern Time for ATARC's 2021 Cloud Virtual Summit. So go register, and I hope everyone has a great rest of their week. Talk to you soon. Bye.